Welcome back to Beyond the Badge. Today, we are sharing a story that cuts deep. A story about the quiet, heavy weight of dignity and the immense cost of selling one's soul for success. Find a comfortable place to sit. Take a breath. Let's begin. The black Rolls-Royce slowed to a stop in front of the towering Whitmore estate in Beverly Hills. The night was crisp, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and the suffocating perfume of old money. Golden light spilled from the massive windows, dancing across marble pillars and manicured gardens that had stood as symbols of unquestioned power for generations. The heavy door opened, and Emily Carter stepped out. Her navy blue suit was sharp, tailored to perfection. Her posture was not just upright, it was regal. She was not merely a guest. She was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the nation. Tonight, she held the pen that would finalize a $900 million partnership. But as her heels touched the marble steps, click, 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 she felt a familiar, cold shiver. It was the same shiver she had felt 20 years ago, standing in a crowded school hallway, clutching a worn-out textbook, knowing that the other kids saw her only as the girl from the wrong side of the tracks. She took a breath, closing her eyes for a fleeting second, remembering her mother's voice. "Emily, never let them see you shrink. You were born to stand tall, even when the world tries to make you small." She walked toward the grand entrance. Every step was a rhythmic assertion of her existence. She had spent years navigating rooms like this, years spent breaking through glass ceilings that were designed to remain unbroken. As she stepped inside, the grand foyer quieted. Conversations drifted off. Eyes turned. Some looked with genuine intrigue, others with cold, calculated doubt. In their world, power was a mirror. It looked like them, it talked like them, and when they looked at Emily, they saw someone they weren't ready to recognize. She walked toward the center of the ballroom, her chin lifted, her eyes scanning the room with the steady gaze of a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. She wasn't looking for approval, she was looking for a partner. But the air in the room was stagnant, filled with the perfume of entitlement. She stopped by a marble pedestal, taking a glass of sparkling water from a passing server, her movements fluid and deliberate. She caught her reflection in a floor-to-ceiling mirror. She looked composed, but inside, she was replaying the sacrifices. The days she skipped meals to buy computer parts, the nights she spent in a drafty office, praying her code would hold. She had built her empire on the principle of honesty. She had hired people who had been discarded by the industry, the dreamers, the forgotten, the ones who had nothing but their integrity. Then the air shifted. A voice sliced through the ambient music, sharp, jagged, and dripping with a cruel, casual arrogance. Daniel Whitmore, the billionaire heir to the empire, stood by the bar. He raised his crystal glass, catching her eye with a smirk that felt like a slap. "Did someone," he drawled, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "bring the help in too early?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to suffocate. A few guests let out a nervous, sycophantic ripple of laughter. Others stared at their shoes, paralyzed by the weight of their own cowardice. The patriarch, Charles Whitmore, stood nearby. He said nothing. He did not reprimand his son. He did not uphold the standard of a host. He simply watched, a faint, patronizing smile playing on his lips. In that heartbeat, Emily felt the sting. It was a familiar ache, the phantom pain of 1,000 slights. It wasn't just the insult, it was the realization that no matter how far she had climbed, no matter how much she had achieved, for men like Daniel, she would always be the help. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her pulse throbbed in her ears. She thought of her mother, working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, never once letting a wealthy neighbor make her feel small. She realized then that this entire partnership was built on a foundation of disrespect. They didn't want her expertise. They wanted her submission. She looked him directly in the eye, a small, polite, chillingly detached nod. She didn't offer a retort. She didn't give him the satisfaction of a scene. She simply set her glass down on the tray of a passing server, her eyes never leaving his. "I believe," she said, her voice clear, calm, and resonant, carrying just as far as his insult had, "that I've seen enough of this house for one lifetime." She turned. Click, click, click. She walked away. Every step was a declaration. Every step was a refusal to participate in her own degradation. Behind her, Daniel laughed, a hollow sound that betrayed his insecurity. "Don't walk away from $1 billion, Emily. You'll never see another offer like this." She didn't stop. She didn't look back. She pushed through the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the cool night air of Beverly Hills. The city lights of Los Angeles stretched out before her, a vast sea of opportunity. She felt the tears pricking at her eyes, not from weakness, but from the sheer, overwhelming relief of being true to herself. She had walked away from the biggest deal of her career, but for the first time in years, she could breathe. The drive home was quiet. She watched the city lights flicker past, thinking of her employees. If she walked away, they would have to work harder. They would have to find new ways to survive. But she knew they would choose that over working for a man who didn't respect them. The following morning, the boardroom was a theater of panic. Her executives were frantic. They paced the length of the glass-walled room, their voices rising in pitch. "Emily, this is $900 million. Our stock will plummet. We cannot walk away from this. It's business, not a personal vendetta. They are the gatekeepers of this industry. If we burn this bridge, we burn every bridge that connects to them." Emily sat at the head of the table. She looked at the people who had worked by her side for years. She saw the fear in their eyes. She thought of the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, and the moral compass that had guided them from a garage startup to a global powerhouse. She stood. The room went dead silent. "We are withdrawing from the Whitmore partnership," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it was absolute. A director stood, his face pale. "Emily, we lose the expansion. We lose the global market. What do we tell our families?" She looked at him, her eyes steady as stone. She walked over to the window where she had started with nothing. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that we are not for sale, that our company was founded on innovation and integrity. If we compromise the second, the first becomes meaningless. The deal is worth $900 million, but our dignity, that is beyond price. I would rather fail standing up than succeed on my knees." The room held its breath. For a moment, there was no sound but the hum of the air conditioning. Then, slowly, one by one, the tension in the room began to shift. The fear didn't vanish, but it was replaced by a strange, new kind of resolve. They had all, at some point, been the ones who had to swallow their pride to get ahead. Today, Emily was giving them a chance to stop swallowing. The fallout was immediate. The markets reacted with confusion, then panic. Headlines screamed about the impulsive move of a woman who had lost her way. The media painted her as an unstable leader, a liability. But then, the tide began to turn. A few days later, the footage surfaced online, grainy, raw, and undeniable. Daniel Whitmore's laughter, his arrogance, his dismissal of a woman who commanded more respect than he had ever earned. The public, tired of the entitled, saw in Emily's silence a reflection of their own struggles. The backlash was seismic. Social media ignited. People shared the video with the hashtag Emily Carter. The outrage was global. Sponsors pulled their support from the Whitmore Corporation. Investors fled the Whitmore name like rats from a sinking ship. For the first time in his pampered, protected existence, Daniel Whitmore saw his name, the name that had bought him everything, become a liability. He tried to call, to negotiate, to apologize with the hollow, rehearsed words of a man who had never faced a consequence in his life. But Emily didn't take the calls. She didn't need to. She was already building. She spent those weeks on the factory floor, in the server rooms, talking to the people who actually kept the company running. She reminded them why they started. She told them the story of her mother, of the struggle, and of the pride that comes from honest work. Weeks later, Emily stood on a stage at the Global Leadership Summit. The silence in the arena was electric. Thousands of faces looked up to her, not as a victor, but as a victor. "Success," she whispered into the microphone, her voice echoing into the hearts of millions, "means nothing if it costs your self-respect. There will be moments when the world offers you everything, provided you agree to be less than who you are. In those moments, choose yourself. You are the architect of your own value. And if a room refuses to hold you, it's not because you are too small. It's because you have outgrown the room." The applause was not a polite gesture. It was a roar. It was the sound of millions of people who had finally found their voice. Across the city, Daniel Whitmore sat in his office, watching the screen. For the first time, he was truly alone. He had all the money in the world, yet he realized he possessed nothing of value. Emily Carter had walked away from a fortune, but in doing so, she had gained something far rarer. She became a symbol for every person who had ever been doubted. She proved that true power isn't about forcing others to respect you. It is about having the courage to refuse to accept anything less. The story of Emily Carter became more than a business headline. It became a lesson taught in homes, in schools, and in the quiet hearts of those struggling to hold on to their identity in a world that asks us to compromise. It was a reminder that the path to true success is rarely paved with easy deals or comfortable compromises. It is paved with the hard, often lonely choices to stand firm when the world demands you bend. Years later, when people spoke of the night of the 900 million, they didn't talk about the money lost. They talked about the woman who walked out of a ballroom and into a legend. They talked about how she showed the world that when you bet on yourself, when you refuse to trade your honor for a seat at a table that doesn't respect your presence, you win in ways that never show up on a balance sheet. You win the right to live without regret. You win the peace of knowing that you belong, not because someone granted you permission, but because you stood your ground and claimed your own space. And in the end, that is the only currency that lasts. As the years passed, Emily continued to lead, not by the force of her ego, but by the power of her example. Her company grew, not because it played by the old rules, but because it redefined them. She mentored others, teaching them the same lesson she had learned on that marble floor, that your dignity is the foundation upon which everything else is built. If the foundation is compromised, the tower will always fall, no matter how high it reaches. In the quiet of her office, looking out over the city she helped reshape, she often thought of that night. She didn't feel anger toward Daniel. She felt a strange, detached pity. He had spent his life believing that power was about what you could take from others. She had learned that power was about what you were willing to give up to keep your soul. So, if you ever find yourself in a room where you are not valued, if you ever feel the pressure to silence your voice to fit in, remember Emily. Remember that you have the right to walk away. Remember that the cost of your self-respect is always too high to pay. The world will try to tell you that you need them, that you are lucky to be there, that you should be grateful for the scraps they throw your way. Don't believe them. You are the CEO of your own life. You set the terms. You decide what is worth your time, your energy, and your spirit. And if the deal doesn't honor who you are, walk away. There is always a better path, a better table, and a better future waiting for those who know their own worth. True power is not a destination. It is a daily practice of standing for what you believe, even when the world is watching, even when it's hard, even when you have to walk alone. Be the one who stands. Be the one who refuses to bow. Be the one who knows that the price of your dignity is priceless. The legacy of Emily Carter isn't found in the buildings she built or the wealth she accumulated. It is found in the quiet resolve of every person who decides, just like she did, that they are enough, that their voice matters, that their dignity is not a negotiation point. When you walk through life, you will encounter many Daniel Whitmores, people who think they own the room, who think they can buy your silence, who think they can dictate your worth. When you meet them, remember the night in Beverly Hills. Remember the click of those heels on the marble floor. Remember the silence that followed her response. Remember that you do not need their permission to be great. You already are. Take a moment now to think about what you are holding on to that is costing you your peace. Is it a job, a relationship, a situation where you are constantly expected to apologize for who you are? If it is, know this. You have the power to walk away. It might be scary. It might feel like you are losing everything, but in reality, you are losing only the things that were holding you back. You are making room for something real. The story of Emily Carter is your story too. Every time you stand up for yourself, you are rewriting the narrative. Every time you say no to disrespect, you are saying yes to your own power. And that, more than anything else, is a victory worth celebrating. So tonight, as you reflect on this story, ask yourself, what is the price of my dignity, and am I willing to pay it? If this story reminded you that your dignity is your greatest asset, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Join our community as we continue to tell stories that honor the human spirit. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth today. We are beyond the badge. Thank you for listening.